Hello everyone, welcome to my Flosstube channel. My name is Jessie Lee and I'm coming at you with video number 25. And I have a little scaly friend with me here today, so if you are not a fan of lizards, go ahead and click forward about 2 minutes. Okay, here she is. It's Calcifer, my beardy. She is usually asleep when I record my videos, but because of daylight savings time, she happened to be awake, so I thought she could come and say hi. Calcifer has been tipping me off that spring is coming because lately she has been so much more active and wanting to spend as much time as possible exploring outside of her tank and sitting in my craft room window sunning herself. It's really fun having her out exploring all the time. Hi, where are you going? But I do tend to avoid letting her out to play until after she has had her daily poo. And I think she's actually kind of picked up on that because she usually hangs out all calm in her tank until she goes poop. And then immediately afterwards, she'll start scratching on the glass like, "Hey lady, there's your turd. Now let me out. We had a deal." So that is the update on Calcifer, my bearded dragon, and I am going to go let her play now. Calcifer is not the only one feeling a bit more energetic lately. I've kind of been feeling that way too. I've been getting more done and getting out of the house more. And I even took my kids on a little adventure last weekend. We took a scenic drive through the big city to a farther away suburb so we could attend a greyhound rescue meet and greet. Before I became a stay-at-home mom, I had 2 jobs working with animals. I worked at a pretty big boarding kennel for dogs and cats and also a veterinarian's office. And through my experiences with so many dogs, I figured out that greyhounds are probably my most favorite breed. They are just so sweet-natured and gentle and pretty lazy too, kind of like cats. And I just love them. So I was really excited to find out about the meet and greet, and I just had a hankering to go love on some string bean doggies and boop all their snoots. It was great. And Sylvia and Glenn don't have much experience with dogs at all. And Glenn in particular can be pretty intimidated by dogs, but the greyhounds are just so polite and gentle and approachable that the kids had no problems meeting them and petting them. It was so sweet to watch. And then afterwards, I was really proud of myself for driving all the way home without getting lost. I am from Omaha, Nebraska, where all of the roads are a perfect grid. You cannot get lost in that city. It is so easy to get around, and you can get anywhere in a reasonable time without taking the interstate most of the time. But if you do take the interstate, a lot of the time you are driving through beautiful spread out farmland. The road's not too crowded. It's just scenic and relaxing. The Twin Cities of Minnesota is not like that at all. It is all busy, crowded, windy interstate roads, and people drive aggressive as hell around here. It is frightening. My skills as a driver have increased so much in the 3.5 years that I've lived here. But also, I have a bigger territory now too. Just the land area that I spend my life in is so much bigger, and there's just been so much to discover. It is really cool. So I'm just happy about my new life here in my new area. I have lived here in Minnesota for a few years now, but I'm still getting used to it, and I'm still feeling more and more grateful that we did move here. And I'm excited to have adventures with my kids here. And speaking of adventures, my kids are on their spring break this week, so we have some more fun activities planned that I'm really looking forward to. It's just going to be super nice to have some fun and connect as a family. As you can probably tell, I am feeling so much better in this video than I did in my last video. And I really just want to thank everyone who watched through my Flosstube number 24 for being so kind and supportive. I am a deeply sensitive person, and that is an aspect of my personality that just comes out more and more as you get to know me. And this channel is about my crafts, which are so personal to me. And I share about my life too, and I can be very real. And I understand that not everyone is used to seeing that on the internet or on Flosstube, but I just want to say that I do have a really wonderful life that I am so grateful for. And I know I do not have a single challenge that I can't overcome, even if that tough stuff does make me cry sometimes. um, I am fluffy Jessie Lee and soggy Jessie Lee equally at the same time. And I am just really so grateful that I have you guys, my stitchy friends, who seem to understand. I'm really excited to talk about stitchy stuff with you all because I have a lot to share this week. And I'm going to start with a haul. The first thing I have is this book that my husband gave me for Valentine's Day that I have been forgetting to show you guys, and I feel so guilty because it's really beautiful. This book is called Mystical Stitches, Embroidery for Personal Empowerment and Magical Embellishment by Christy Johnson. And here is the absolutely beautiful cover. This book is about embroidery, so it has some examples of stitches, just some instructions for embroidery stitches to get you started. And then there are all of these stitched examples of different spiritual symbols. Look at that up close. It is just gorgeous to look at. And there are just little pictorials and descriptions in here of everything from, this is tools, but there's plants and animals, planets, a little bit of numerology, just all kinds of mystical stitches. It's really interesting. And then they have little suggestions for projects towards the end. This was Amulet Adornments Necklace. Pretty cool. It's just a really neat book about using stitching to express your spirituality. It is just so neat, and I think it's so cool that Tim picked this out for me. I also bought myself a new type of needle to try stitching with. They are John James Petites. And funny enough, as I was waiting for them to come in the mail, Kaylee of Kaylee's Cross Stitch said that she had bought them to try too. So Kaylee, if you're watching this, let us know what you think of them, because I've been stitching with these petites for about a week and a half, and I have a lot of thoughts. The John James Petites are about 1/4 of an inch shorter than the standard DMC tapestry needles that I had been stitching with. And the advantage of using a shorter needle is that you can get more stitches out of one length of thread. And I love that about these needles. It is so much easier for me to predict where my stopping point should be with my thread before I need to change to a new one. With my DMCs, I would always overestimate the number of stitches I could do and then end up having to quit in a funny spot because my needle just wouldn't let me go any further, and it was super annoying, and that happened to me all the time. I really don't have any problem holding and maneuvering the smaller needles at all, so the shorter length overall is really an advantage. However, the metal finish of these needles is a matte gold, and that matte texture just creates a barely perceptible friction as it passes through the fabric, but I do notice it, and sometimes it can give me the heebie-jeebies. I think that might just be me being kind of sensitive, and most people wouldn't notice that, but it is something that I noticed anyway. And also the tip of these needles is shaped quite a bit different. It has a very short conical tip. My DMC needles had a smooth tapered tip. The conical tip of the petites kind of makes a little popping feeling as it passes through the fabric, when the DMCs would just glide straight through. The DMC needles, though, would often split the threads of my previous stitches, where the sort of almost more blunt feeling tip of the petites doesn't do that at all. However, the petite needle tips do have a harder time passing through tighter spaces. Like if I'm trying to push the needle through a hole that is shared with 3 other stitches, it's a little more tough, and I feel like I have a hard time getting my stitches to lay right because it pushes the corners of my stitches upwards or downwards just a little too much, and I don't like that. Maybe having a skinnier needle, like a smaller gauge, would help, but I really think it is the shape of the tip that causes that. And I don't like that at all for backstitching especially, so that is sort of a disadvantage to these needles. So I've just gotten really technical talking about needles of all things, but that's one of our supplies. You can't do anything without a good needle. So overall, I am liking them, but I feel like they're not as well rounded as my DMCs were. I could do anything with my basic DMC needles. With these, when I'm just doing crosses, they are pretty much great, but I don't like them for backstitch. They're just not quite right because of the tip. In addition to those extra tiny needles, I also bought myself this big thing. This is a set of storage drawers for my slowly but surely growing collection of fancy floss. These are the exact same drawers that I used to house my full set of DMC, except they're pink. The aqua colorway that I used for my DMC is no longer available unless I bought it from Amazon UK, and I thought it was a little ridiculous to have that shipped overseas, so I settled for the pink. And these are actually paper storage drawers for like an office desk, but I configured them to work for my bobbins of floss. In my aqua ones, I used this type of drawer dividers. They can click together and you can cut them to any size you wanted. And I use these to compartmentalize my drawers to hold my floss. And I know floss drops are getting wildly popular now, but I'm just a bobbinator, you guys. I just love how that system works, and I love how it fits in the drawers, and I love my metal mesh drawers in aqua so much for my DMC that I was just thinking ahead, and I'm glad that I was able to snag the pink ones. So all of my storage is matchy-matchy as best as it could be before these just aren't sold anymore. My last bit of haul was also for storage. It is these bins here that I got from Amazon. Aren't they cute? I desperately needed to organize my craft closet. It was a mess in there. Everything was just piled on the shelves in there. So I went searching and found these bins, which are not only the perfect size and were one of the cheaper options, they're also the best colors because the shelves in my craft closet are pink. So here is a after picture of how it looks now that it's organized. I did not think to take a before picture, but believe me, this is a huge improvement. I have been stitching up a storm lately, but before I show you my projects, I have to show you my daughter Sylvia's project. Here it is. This is the first thing she has ever stitched. I had the big Ada in my stash, and then she chose all of her own colors and did this little scatter of stitches. And then with her consultation, I turned it into a fridge magnet. Here is the back. I used some of that magnetic sheeting so it sticks on my fridge. And I think it turned out kind of looking like a little sprinkle cupcake. Sylvia will be 7 in June, and she really wanted to cross stitch like mommy. And you can see here we did try a couple of crosses, but that turned out to be way too difficult for her, so she did this instead. And she really enjoyed herself, and I was so proud of her. It's not as obvious as it is with her brother, but Sylvie is autistic, and she's a bit developmentally behind her peers, but she really has exceptional character. Sylvia is better than most adults at pushing through things that are hard for her and finding her own way of doing things. And that's exactly what she did with this little embroidery project. And I love it and I love her so, so much. My first WIP I have to show you is my Temperature Butterflies by Sarah the Stitchin Mommy. Here it is. I am stitching this on 25 count black Lugana with my own color scheme using the brightest shades of DMC Light Effects and DMC Satin Flosses. And since you've last seen it, I finished up the February butterfly and got quite a bit done on half of the March butterfly. And you can tell by the colors moving from the purples into the yellows and oranges that it's trying to warm up around here, but it definitely doesn't feel like spring quite yet. We're getting there. We actually got dumped on with snow just a week ago, and it was the first time I've ever been shocked by snow here in Minnesota. It just caught me off guard, and it's funny too, because I'm usually way more aware of the forecast, but the day before it snowed was the day that I was driving all over town with the kids to go pet the greyhounds, and that day it was raining. It was warm enough to rain, and it was very gloomy. There was fog everywhere. It was very gray, but it felt beautiful because it just seemed like spring. And then we went to bed that night, and the kids woke me up before dawn that morning, as they usually do. And since it was dark outside with the lights on inside the house, I couldn't really see out the windows. So I made the kids breakfast, and the kitchen trash got full, so I took out the bag and opened my back door to throw the bag of trash out in our big trash can, and whipped the door open, and everything was covered in 5 inches of snow. It had snowed that much overnight, and I had absolutely no clue. And I didn't expect it at all because the day before had seemed so spring-like. It was a rude awakening. And what was even more rude about it was that it was Sunday. My husband works 12-hour shifts on weekend nights, so he sleeps during the day over the weekend, and it always snows on the weekend, so I have to shovel it all. That's how it's always been. It always snows on the weekend, so I do the majority of the shoveling for our household. It is super annoying. The other super annoying thing is that every time my kids have ever gotten sick and thrown up in bed, it's been on weekend nights when Tim is away. Tim's an ER nurse. He is way more equipped than I am to deal with puke. But pretty much every time my kids have had a stomach bug, I've had to clean it. I'm the one who's been available. It's pretty nasty, but luckily they're at an age now where they can make it to the toilet to puke. So that battle of my life is over, but man, life is just not fair sometimes. Oh yeah, because of the snow last Sunday, I ended up not spending any time on my Quaker Peace sampler. Quaker Peace by Remembering Bygone Stitches is my Sabbath stitch. I usually throw some stitches into it every Sunday night, but because I was shoveling snow all day last Sunday, I was pretty tired out, so I just farted around on my phone that night instead of stitching. So I don't have anything on Quaker Peace to show you, but I do have my temperature walk with me to show you. This is another pattern by Sarah the Stitchin Mommy, and it is dog themed. So I am stitching this for my in-laws who have 2 beloved doggies, and they live in Florida. So I get to experience an entirely different climate through stitching this piece. And this is on 28 count light blue even weave by Zweigart. And I'm using most of the called for colors. I just had to narrow the color scale down a little bit to fit the Floridian climate. And also I changed the color of the concrete here so it wouldn't blend in with my fabric too much. But I do enjoy stitching the paw prints in Sarah's colors. They are some very pretty sort of jewel tones almost. And as you can see here with the yellow, it's getting warmer in Florida too. These shades of light green and yellow are for the mid and high 70s. So yeah, I'm a little envious. I also had 3 new starts that I had so much fun working on, and I'm super psyched to show you. Starting with this design here. This is a clipping I bought off Etsy from July 1994 for the Love of Cross Stitch magazine. And I'm working on this design here. And this design is called Give Thanks. It's by Kooler Design Studio. I searched around the internet to see if it's still available and could not find it. So I'm very happy that I was able to buy this magazine clipping. And I will be replacing the poem here with my own charted lyrics to the folk song De Colores. And here is what I got done on it so far. This was a really good new start. I made quite a bit of progress already and had so much fun stitching up that rainbow. And then I roughed in all the clouds around it, and I even got this little butterfly right here. Well, it is a little butterfly because it's actually part of the foreground overlapping with the rainbow in the background, but when you just see it sitting on a cloud up against a rainbow, it actually looks like a humongous butterfly. It is a gigantic mutant butterfly who wants to steal the nectar of all the earth's flowers. I think I better hurry up and stitch the rest of this so we can see that it's actually a part of the foreground. I am stitching this on 32 count white opalescent Lugana with all the called for DMC. I also started a project for my new baby niece. My sister-in-law named her Rhea, and she's absolutely beautiful. She was born with a full head of hair. So cute. And the design I'm stitching for her is this one. It's by Durene Jones, and it's called A is for Ellipsis. And this is what I've stitched so far. I got A, B, and C all done. Here it is a little closer, but my camera's gonna mess up the colors. Believe it or not, my favorite part of stitching this so far has been the back stitch. Durene Jones just creates the cutest images, and stitching in the back stitch details just takes it over the top. So that was really fun for me. I'm stitching this on 32 count lime Lugana with all the called for DMC, except I switched out the black text for green text. And I actually stole this idea from one of my viewers. Mary Ellen left a comment on my last video saying she stitched this design for her grandson, and she did all the words in dark green. And I thought that would look fantastic, especially on my light green fabric. So that's what I'm doing. So thank you for the idea, Mary Ellen. My plan for this piece is that I want to stitch it all up and turn it into a tote bag and fill that tote bag full of board books. So Rhea, for her first Christmas, will get a nice bag full of books with the alphabet on it. So each month I will stitch in a couple of the letters and get it done little by little. So if you keep watching my videos, you will see this gradually get worked on throughout the year. My last new start was on The Fox Family by Ukrainian designer Stitchy Princess on Etsy, and she goes by Stitchy Princess Black on Instagram. And before I show you what I've stitched so far, I want to give you a little slideshow of her other designs that I've bought from her Etsy. Stitchy Princess Katerina was the first person I thought of when I learned about the war happening in Ukraine. So I immediately went to her Etsy and bought as many patterns as I could. She is staying in Ukraine at the moment, and she is able to give updates on Instagram of her status, and they're heartbreaking to read. But she has said that the uptick in sales from her Etsy has really helped her stock up on food and supplies and even share a bit with her neighbors. So I feel just grateful, I guess, that the support of our stitching community has made a bit of a difference. This is what I've stitched on the Fox Family so far. I'm already about halfway done with it. It's quite a quick stitch, and it's really fun too. The design is just beautiful, and Katerina's use of negative space is really just genius and makes it really interesting to stitch as well as quick, like I said. I am stitching this on 32 count Vintage Stormy Night Lugana. And I'm using all of the called for colors of DMC, except I changed the bird here to be a red belly woodpecker, and I wanted its head to be a little more red. So I swapped out one of the colors and I made the berries red instead of this orange just to tie it together. But the rest of the design I will stitch as charted, and it's really and truly beautiful. I love this piece so much, and I just feel honored to be able to have a piece of Katerina's art and to be able to help out, at least in a very small way. I also managed to work on 2 craft projects that I want to show you just really quick, starting with this caterpillar plushie that I knitted. Last time I showed it to you, it just looked like a flat rag, but now it is a caterpillar, and I made him to go with this book and this blankie, and these items go together to create number 4 of the 25 bedtime bags that I am making this year to donate to children at my local homeless shelter. And my last little craft is actually a tradition of mine. Every year when we get a Christmas tree, I take a little slice from the trunk and set it aside for a couple months so it can thoroughly dry out, but I eventually always paint a little image on it to commemorate the year. So I painted the 2021 stump slice, and here it is. Last year, we took our first family camping trip, so this little picture of elves roasting marshmallows represents that memory. And these elves do roughly represent my own kids, especially the boy elf. Glenn, my son, does not like to eat marshmallows, but he is totally down to set them on fire. This is probably the most detailed image I've ever painted. I am not an artist, and it was kind of tricky to paint these tiny little somewhat detailed elves on a 2-inch diameter piece of rough wood, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The one thing I'm iffy about is their faces. I tried to make it easy on myself and give them little kawaii dot eyes, but I think they look perhaps a little demonic. Oh well, I did my best. This is just a lovely memory for me, and I think this will look so cute. I just gotta glue a string to it so it can be an ornament and hang on a little mini tree with all of the others that I have from the past 11 years now. And that is all I have to share with you today. So thank you for watching. And before I go, I've just got to share with you the motto of my grandma, who inspired me both in stitching and in life. God loves you, and I love you. Happy stitching! Bye-bye!